This evening, we're so honored to have Sylvia Arotin join us. And as many of you probably know, Sylvia is a child development and behavior coach expert. She's director of Mind Montessori and CEO of Guide and Grow. Sylvia, thanks for spending an hour with us. Can you start maybe by telling us your Montessori story? How did you get into Montessori originally?
Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. So nice to see you and some familiar faces as well and names on here. My story is actually really interesting. So I originally was in the hospitality and fitness industry. And then in 2010, I had a major car accident that took me off that path of physical kind of work and all that. And I had to really reassess what my skill set was and what I was good at. So I kind of got together with some friends and family, and we had a discussion about, what they thought my qualities were or what I was interested in. And we kind of came to the conclusion that teaching might be something that I would be good at, or that I really liked working with people and teaching people. So a friend's mum was visiting from Vienna, and she is a Montessori teacher. She was a 3 to 6 trained teacher. And so I had a discussion with her and she introduced me to Montessori. And then as soon as I read up on it, I absolutely was like, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. And she was actually working in aged care. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there is a lot of research around Montessori and working with the elderly in aged care, specifically with those that are living with dementia and Alzheimer's. So I actually started my Montessori journey in that field. So I started working with Suzanne and also Maxine, who's based here in Australia in the aged care. And I was working in nursing homes, applying those principles that we do with the 0 to 3 age bracket to those living with dementia and Alzheimer's. And it actually prolonged their symptoms and they were having a better quality of life. So I then presented this work to directors and owners of schools across Sydney. And then my first Montessori school that I worked for approached me after that session and said, would you like to come and work in my toddler class? And I was like, what's that? So I got thrown into the parent toddler program at a very young age of 20 something, early 20s. And that's how I started my journey in Montessori.
What have you most loved about your journey in Montessori?
I think it's the transformation of the self. So I feel like being a Montessori educator, and when you start learning and working with children and parents, you actually learn a lot about yourself, and you have to do a lot of diving really deep into yourself. And so I think the transformation that you go through as a prepared adult, and all those levels that you move through to be more conscious, to do things with intention, to do things sincerely, children will always reflect that as well in you. So they'll show up things in you, like characteristics or things that you thought that you might not have had, but when they're reflected in the child that's opposite you, and parents will know this straight away, children will show you things and sides of you that you didn't think that they would be triggered in you. But then you get confronted with that and you think, okay, well, I've got to think about myself and how I responded and how I reacted. And you've got to be really conscious about your movements and your, how you are when you are around children. So they teach you a lot about yourself. And I think that's what I've loved most, as well as the impact that you see it's had on children, when they move through the years and you see how they've kind of developed. And some of my students are now in high school, and I see that, once they've moved through that whole journey, it's just incredible. So that's what I've loved about it.
And you're staying in touch with those students?
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I still see them from time to time, and it's just kind of still conversing with them and seeing where they're at.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing about Montessori, right? That, we have students who still enjoy staying in touch with their school because they have such a good feeling about it, and their teachers, they have good memories of being loved and cared for and nurtured by their educators, and so they want to stay in touch rather than in traditional education where it's like, I can't wait to get away from you.
Yeah, that's true. And they actually have amazing memories of what things that they were doing in school. Like they would remind me, oh, Sylvia, do you remember when, we planted the cabbage? I mean, we're talking preschool years, when we planted the cabbage and we pulled it out and we washed it and we were eating it. Like, that's incredible. 10 years later, they're still talking about the cabbage that we planted.
I guess, that transformation that you're talking about, and that's actually the topic of our Montessori Australia conference at the end of October in Sydney, is because it's such an important aspect of being a Montessorian. That's most difficult when children show us things about ourselves that we really don't want to look at. That we, what have been some of your most notable challenges in your life as a Montessori educator? Are there things that you remember that you've learned about yourself that you didn't want to look and were dragged kicking and screaming by children to face?
You know what, actually, one of the biggest things that I remember as a challenge was being so young and being in a parent-toddler program. So not having that much experience, but yet filling in shoes for educators that had been there for a lot longer period of time, not having any children of my own, and giving advice and talking to parents about child's development and what was going on with their children and what we observe and what we see in the classroom. That was one of my biggest challenges, because I was filling in for some teachers that had 20, 30, 40 years experience. So everyone would look at me and think, oh, who's this 20-something-year-old trying to tell me about my children or my parenting and so I think the biggest challenge for me was to have that confidence in myself, that I knew that I could talk about what I observed with children and from my experience or from my knowledge and studying about Montessori, to feel confident to have those conversations with parents, but also learn about what it is to be a parent and going through that journey. So it took, at the beginning years, I would be, sad, and I'd talk to the principals or directors like, it's really upsetting that people, might ask for another educator to take my position, and that was at the very beginning, and I think it's a great lesson for you to look into yourself, to have that confidence, but also know that you are doing the best that you possibly can. And these families, sometimes transitions are hard. They're used to a certain thing. So it just takes time to get used to something else. And then once that relationship was built and once that, that connection was established, then it was a lot easier to kind of to run those programs and then move around and start growing with them. So.
Yeah, that reminds me of my early days as a teacher. I didn't have a child until I was married for 13 years. And because we were always around child energy, my wife was an educator as well. So we didn't feel the need to. And then, I ran a parenting class as a childless educator early on, and had all kind, still can't believe that I did that. And then was giving advice to parents and had all kinds of judgments in my head that I didn't verbalize, but all kinds of judgments about parents. And then I had my own child, and I realized it's not quite as easy as I was, or simple and straightforward as I was thinking. And then after I'd taught long enough to have siblings of students that I'd had previously too, and see that they're actually very different individuals. Even coming from the same families.
Yeah.
Do you have any unforgettable moments of your time as a Montessori educator that you want to share?
Yeah, I do actually. And I think one of the most unforgettable moments was when I decided to put my resignation in. So I was working, once I went into a toddler program, I started working at a few different schools around Sydney. So Castlecraig, Mossman, Avalon, and I was running lots of the under threes programs. And then I had some phone calls from friends and family saying, Sylvia, can you please come and set up a school in Northwest Sydney? So I'm now based in kind of about 45 to 50 minutes from the city in the western suburbs in Sydney, so around Blacktown, the Hills area. And so I put my resignation in, and I told the principal of the school at the time, I really want to set up my own Montessori school. And, I'm really excited about it. And this is my journey moving forward. And she was very supportive of that. And then during that school holiday period, I was asked by a family of the Montessori school in Barrenjoey, in Avalon, to go away with them just to teach their boys, because they were going to be out of Montessori school for a while. So I decided, I was like, great, yep, let's go on this trip to New York, all expenses paid. I was, young and really excited about my career and, starting a new school. So I had taken off on this holiday, and then it was probably about a week before I came home. I'd finished up with the family, and then I spent a week to visit my father, who lives in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, I had gotten severely sick, and I started having these episodes, and I started passing out all the time, and they didn't really know what was wrong with me. Long story short, I came home and I spent about 1 month in hospital before I was diagnosed with a chronic illness called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And it's a neurological dysfunction that doesn't allow blood flow to go through your body and your brain. So every time you stand up, you basically pass out. And so I was sitting there in hospital with this dream to open a Montessori school. And I can't forget the moment that I had all the school logos in front of me by a graphic designer, still deciding which logo I was going to choose, how I was going to open the school with this illness, and how I was going to get my kind of quality of life back, because the doctors were telling me that it's, you might not be able to walk, you might not be able to, because people with my condition can be quite chronically ill, and I'll just be in a wheelchair and not be able to have a normal life again. So I decided that that wasn't going to be the case, because I had this passion and this dream to open my Montessori school. So I basically fought as much as I possibly could, found every alternative, medicine or therapy, and taught myself how to walk and stand up. And probably about 7 or 8 months later, after that period of time, I then found a premises where I could set up the school, where I didn't have to travel, so that I could have the program running and me be there in my comfort zone, so that I could start my school. And we started with a couple of students. And now we've been 10 years later, we have, NIDO program, toddler program, preschool. We've had hundreds of families come through. And I can say that it's a lot more managed, my condition, but it's one of those moments that I will never forget, where we started and now, where we're heading. So, yeah.
Wow. What an inspiring story. And I got to say, that's one of the things I've always admired about you, is you're such a go-getter. You decide, obviously you it's clear from all of the things that you do and have done, you decide what you want to do and you just go after it. Can you tell us more about Guide and Grow?
Oh, yeah. So Guide and Grow, about probably 5 years ago, I realized that parents were looking for more support. So there was kind of a disconnect, what was happening in schools and what was happening at homes, and parents really needed more support in the home. So we started running parent workshops through the school. And then I did an interview around child development and behavior online with a colleague of mine. And she had this Facebook group with, I think, a couple of hundred or just under 1,000 members in it. And she said, "Oh, Sylvia, do you want to take over this Facebook group? Because I don't have time and it's not very active and I don't really know what to do with it. It's Montessori for 0 to 3 years." And so I told her, I don't even have Facebook. I don't even know what a Facebook group is, but okay, it sounds like a lot of people, but I'll try my best and I'll see what I can do with it. Anyway, so I took that group from her, and then we branded, I come out with this brand called Guide and Grow, which essentially was to help support parents and educators and create resources online. And then through COVID, in my first year, we reached, I think, 100,000 members. And then now we're at 222,000 members globally. And that's for Montessori at home 0 to 3 years. So I saw this dramatic increase on social media for people that are looking for Montessori or to be supported. So we have a whole array of free resources that includes YouTube channel talking about child development and behavior and all the fun stuff. And then we do blogs and events every month as well. And it's all free for people to join and be a part of that community, just to support people on their Montessori journey, but also to let them know the reality of Montessori, because a lot of the time people have these misconceptions, especially with the next generation of parenting, and social media can contribute to that, because people are like labeling things as Montessori when they're really not, or they're too focused on what it looks like and the materials rather than the principles. So it's about creating this authentic space where people can genuinely ask questions and get that information that's going to be authentic and genuine, to help them on their Montessori journey. Yeah.
Is there a, can you talk a bit about the approach, the parenting approach that you help to educate parents about?
Yeah, so Montessori, so we all know that Montessori, if you didn't know, it started as an education, pedagogy and philosophy. And so we've seen a huge kind of increase in people doing Montessori at home or Montessori parenting. And basically, I just take it from the basic principles of what Montessori is. So respecting that the child is, capable and confident, giving them opportunities for independence in the home. So all the principles that we kind of put into the classroom, it's the same thing at home, having a prepared environment. What does that look like? Do you give your children opportunities to contribute in the home? Are there things set up on the shelf that are, not too distracting and full on and, simple and aesthetically, beautiful, so that they can actually function in that space? So the same principles that we have in the classroom, it's applying those at home. And also just, I feel like it culminates all of the respectful parenting, positive discipline, conscious parenting. So there are all these terminologies that have come up: emotionally intelligent parenting, all these lovely terminology, but yet it's just Montessori. It's been around for 150 years, and just applying that in the home. So I think it kind of amalgamates everything into one. And just raising children that are going to be mindful and kind and, ready for anything that life has to throw at them. They're ready to problem solve. They can critically think, giving them the opportunities to be that child that every parent wants their children to be,
Wow. So you help parents through Guide and Grow, CEO of Guide and Grow. You're director of a school. You're also a development and behavior coach. How do you do? When do you sleep? How do you manage the work-life balance?
I need
Have you found the key to that?
So probably it wasn't until about 3 years ago, I would say, that I found a work-life balance. And of course, like at the beginning of my journey, it was really important for me to have my health as a priority. So for me, like making sure that I maintain that healthy lifestyle to help my illness and my symptoms and all that. And I still do. I have a very strict regimen, and I have to do all the therapies and yoga and, Pilates and eating organic and all this sort of stuff. So I think it that all came part of my journey. And then finding a work-life balance, I think in the first 5 years or 6 years of my school and the business and Guide and Grow, up until about a couple of years ago, I probably didn't sleep. And it was about finding people. I have an amazing team of people around me. I'm so grateful, to have that support. And anybody else who's, on this journey, having that support network, having great people around you that have the same vision or passion and share that can help you to accomplish whatever, path that you have is really important to your success. You can't do everything on your own. And I think some small businesses or principals or school leaders think, oh, well, it's easier if I do it. Well, it's, and I quickly learned that, yes, I can do it myself, and it might be easier for me to do it myself, but you have to trust in people. And if they do it 70% just as good, then that's good enough, because then you can make up that 20 or 30%. But having that help is so important on your journey, regardless of where it is. So I've had some amazing educators and teachers that have stayed with me from the beginning until now. And, you know, having a team at Guide and Grow, volunteers that help moderate the Facebook group and, you know, all our marketing, and you have to have people to help you. It's impossible to do it on your own. And then I realized that there was such a thing as work-life balance and that, you know, as much as our work is in Montessori, we're so passionate about what we do and we just want to help and help and help and help. It does take a toll. So my body would quickly tell me that I need to slow down. So I'm fortunate that I have a condition that allows me or forces me to stop. Otherwise, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't listen. But you really do have to prioritize your health and make sure that you have that balance where you switch off, you know, on the weekends or whatever it is. The boundaries are really important so that you can travel and you can enjoy your life as much as you are doing this work.
So do you have any advice for those of us in Montessori who still find that challenging? I know in my experience, it's a bit of a chronic issue for Montessorians who just have such passion for this work that we do. And like you said, want to do everything ourselves and don't want to delegate. What do you think? What are the keys that you...
I heard some great advice, and somebody told me, Sylvia, you know that work is going to be there waiting for you tomorrow. So those important things that we just think that we have to get done today, they don't have to get done today. They can wait till tomorrow. Everyone will wait for you till tomorrow. So I put boundaries in as to specifically, like now my weekends, I have specific weekends that are a work-free weekend. So Saturday and Sunday that I've let everybody know, and making sure that people around you also know your boundaries is really important so that they also are respectful of that. So now people know from a Saturday afternoon to Sunday, that's my time for family, for relationships, for friends, for going out, for having that downtime, because that downtime is so important to all of us so that we can recharge and rejuvenate and get ready, for the next week that we're doing, whatever it is that we're doing or traveling. And so I think making sure that you do reflect on those boundaries and putting them in place and letting people know that that's what's going to be your boundary, as well as making time for something for yourself, whether that's a Pilates class, whether it's yoga, like that. For me, that's my time. So having that time and committing to it like you would commit to a business meeting. So the thing is that a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm going to start exercising, or I'm going to start walking, or I'm going to start eating, or having this lifestyle. But then quickly they stop, other things take place, like that meeting. So if you have a class at that particular time, no meetings or nothing's going to be booked in that time, because that has already been booked and you need to commit to it. So I think that takes time to then form a habit so that then you can, have that balance start coming in, because it's so important.
Yeah. Are there other desirable skills and talents you think are really important for an educational leader, somebody leading others in your position?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having open communication and having a relationship with the people in your team, and knowing that they can come to you and talk to you openly about certain things or issues that are, so if there are any leaders or school principals that are listening, I think really establishing that connection and relationship with your team, and always making sure that you are involved, so I still am in the classroom once or twice a week, because I want to be there for my staff. I want to see what's happening. I want to still have that connection with them and them know that I'm always going to be there. And so not just disconnecting yourself and kind of being like, well, this is my position, leadership, and having someone else have that conversation and relationship with them. I still value, pulling everyone together and having a team meeting, regardless if there are other people in between. So I think that's something really important, and also trusting in them. So I find that a lot of the time people in leadership will put a lot of direction and give a lot of direction to staff, not allowing them to have this expression in the classroom. So if you are an educator, you should be valued, and your ideas, and when you're going to set up a room, and it should be a collaborative thing. It shouldn't be me saying, oh, this is what we should be doing and this is how we should be doing it. It should be them discussing and being collaborative in that approach, so that they also feel valued and their ideas can be expressed in the classroom. And because that makes them feel valued and contributing to the space.
So bringing Montessori principles that we use to manage children in the classrooms, then to managing adults as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that connection and relationship with the adults in the space, but also let them be involved in the decision making, and also let them have a voice, not just kind of this directorship where it's, top down and one way.
Are there any books that you ask your educators to read that you want people around you to know about, like either Montessori books or non-Montessori books?
Yeah, well, my book is going to be the next book that I recommend that I'll be writing. It's how to talk to kids. But one of the ones that really inspired me before I have that one, and I'll tell you why I'm passionate about this topic, is How to Talk So Children Listen and Listen So Children Talk.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ones that I get all of my educators, parents to read, because they have one for early childhood, but the skills are really, really important. Because one thing I saw that was lacking in my Montessori training, as well as my undergraduate and postgraduate studies in education, even at a master's level, we never had a module on how to communicate with children or guide their behavior or support children's behavior. How can you send educators out, even in mainstream or Montessori, without knowing how to communicate or giving them the skill set so they feel confident in how to have those conversations or guide children, or, if there is challenging behavior in the classroom and adults feel, that they don't know how to respond to that. That's what's causing the biggest stress in our classrooms and teachers leaving the sector, because they feel overwhelmed and they don't have that confidence in their skill set to be able to handle that or deal with, or support children. So that's essential. And yes, we can type the book. I'll put it into the chat for BB. I'll just put that in there now.
Yeah, it's How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. It's a real classic.
Yeah.
And there were I think there were a few
series.
That wrote.
Yeah, there is. My favorite message. They came out with a new one, actually, and I usually have it lying around here, but I don't think I do today. But there's a new one that they came out with, which really kind of culminates all of their books and has some really practical. And the thing that I love about those books is you don't have to be a reader to read those books. You can literally flick through and get these practical skills and tips that you can apply to the classroom or to the home in 5 minutes, and and just summarizes everything. So that's what's great about those books too. Yeah.
Now you've just come back from the Congress in Thailand.
Yes.
What do you looking from outside, what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by Montessori in Australia? You travel the world a lot, talking and giving workshops and presentations, and from what you've seen around the world, what do you think is our challenge here?
Yeah, it was really interesting, actually, when I was in Thailand and we were talking about some of the challenges that we face in Australia, and what the running theme is that people are struggling to find Montessori educators. So I know that finding educators is particularly a big challenge that we face in Australia for schools and centres as well, and the high staff turnover that we face in childcare, so in long daycares and early childhood. That's one of the major challenges, I feel. The other thing is people not having access to Montessori schools and centres, because in where I am, so where my school sits, we're not a long daycare centre. So we operate as a traditional Montessori school. So our preschool programs operate 9 to 3. We have school holidays. It's more of an education and development program rather than a childcare centre. So we're the only one within, 30 kilometers or 40-kilometer radius surrounding us that runs this kind of a program. So people having access to high quality Montessori education is also a big issue. And then the growth, it's not growing as much as we would hope in the primary and secondary schools. So we are growing, but very slowly. So I think the early childcare space has been growing more rapidly than the primary and high school. But then there's a question of, is it authentic Montessori? Can you do that in long daycare? And all those kind of questions that come up as well.
So why do you think that is, that Montessori is growing so slowly in Australia? I mean, it seems to me that in the US, it's really undergoing a bit of a renaissance right now. And I think public school is really driving that. There are almost 600 public school programs in the United States, whereas we have 50 schools total in Australia. And it's also, I think, driven by for-profit primary schools in the US, where you can't do that in Australia easily or at all. But what do you think are the reasons why it's really, I mean, really, it's 115 years it's been in Australia. Is it roughly that? And yet we're still serving 0.012% of children in this country.
I know. It's because of the government. Movement. No, it's because the government doesn't recognize. So we're one of the very few countries where the government has not kind of come on board and supported, Montessori in the public sector. We have it in, the Torres Strait Island and Northern Territory. We've got, 1 or 2 like small schools, but it's really something that we need to really advocate for the government to recognize this type of education and come on board so that we can get more public schools to be, rolling out this program. Because I see Montessori as that should be mainstream, right? Like anyone who's in Montessori is like, this education just should be the mainstream education. There's no doubt about it. The children are getting so much out of this. So, I mean, it is a big problem because we need to advocate more on a government level of this type and prove this type of education, because everywhere else in the world seem to have done it, and their governments have been supportive and funding projects and. So I think that that's one of the major problems we have here. The other amazing thing I discovered that was happening in the US, which I would love to bring here, is Montessori on Wheels, which was a project founded by Tatenda in Colorado. And he he converted a school bus into a Montessori classroom, and then he's taking it to mainstream schools and saying, here's a 6 to 8 week enrichment curriculum for your school. And schools were, loving this enrichment curriculum, which is basically teaching children life skills, problem solving, learning all the curriculum outcomes in a hands-on, sensory, tactile way. So I think that could be an option, as our government is supportive of, I guess, education which is mobile and that can reach rural communities as well. So, I don't know what the solution is, but we've just got to really advocate and try and get the attention of more councils and, and government and things like that. And I've been lucky enough to I'm working with Blacktown Council, which is our local council area, to do training and to do educating for their mainstream educators in childcare and early childhood, so that I can, kind of try and let them know about Montessori and what it is. So we've really got to work outside of our community to bring more attention to Montessori.
How do you think we could do that as a movement, to bring the attention of government to the successes of the Montessori program? It seems like the government is really looking for solutions. They realize that the current system is not, there is a recognition, slow but sure recognition that the current system is failing, and that NAPLAN scores have been going down ever since NAPLAN started, and that it's not meeting the needs. The public school population, student population is stagnant or slowly declining in certain areas. So it seems like there's the current National School Review that's going on, looking for yet another declaration about how they can fix the system. But it doesn't seem like they're that interested in looking at radical solutions like Montessori. Not that Montessori is that radical, but
totally not radical. But I think we could basically use other, other models, like, or other countries as models. When you look at Europe and you look at all of the Montessori schools that are there in the public system and how well they're performing, I think it just more research needs to be done, and more kind of documentation needs to be presented to our government and to the education minister and all that. And that starts with relationships. It can start as small as working with councils, like I'm doing myself, to try and work with local councils, and then getting that movement, and then, slowly working your way up. So I think we've got to start somewhere. But
how receptive is Blacktown Council?
Oh, fantastic! They're amazing. Yeah, they're great. We did one session on the Montessori way of communicating, and then now they want to do more about the environment and this and that. And these are principles that they can take into their spaces. So they are very receptive to wanting to do things a bit differently, because the problem that we see in schools, in mainstream schools and centres, like I was talking about earlier, is the stress on the educators and the fact that things are not happening or working the way that they felt like it should. So obviously something needs to change, and that desperation is becoming more and more. So the more that we can try and have these conversations with mainstream schools and centres and say, hey, look, things can be done differently, and this is the outcomes, and you just need a few people to kind of come on board, and then that movement will start moving forward. But I think you also have to have the support of the community and organizations behind you, so that you can do that. I am going to read some of the comments in the chat.
Or should we invite people to unmute themselves and ask questions? There is quite a bit in there. Andy, would you like to, or Ilona, would either of you like to ask a question of Sylvia?
Yes, I think the solution is there. For me, the conference was a complete eye-opener. And I have to say, the AMI is completely failing. Sorry to say this, but completely failing. And because, in my opinion, you probably have heard what question I asked when Palzi was talking. And he said, we need trained teachers. And trained mean teachers which are able to teach in regular schools. All the teachers which have AMI diploma are not able to teach in regular schools because they're not accepted. So what has to change is actually instead of training teachers only for AMI, we have to bring the Montessori idea to the universities, where the teachers get trained inside the universities, because only then we can actually transform them for public sector. I don't know any country. Okay, Thailand is allowing teachers which are no teachers to teach in schools. Yeah, there are always ways around, and then you get. We have a lot of teachers which are actually no real teachers. They have not learned how to teach. That they teach in schools. And that's one way to get them in, but it's not the best way. And AMI is actually supporting exactly this. And this is, I think, not good. Yeah, there are universities in US which have now started to integrate. Also, we have Wisconsin, Hartford. We have
yes.
Yeah, two were present actually. They were there, and this is the right way, in my opinion. And actually. It was so sad that nobody who is actually now here was in the talk of Sarah. We were all sitting there and only our mouths open. But really, just imagine, there is a woman coming from an African country and going on the stage there and opening up the speech. I have put the link in there. Please watch this video. And this was only an incident. I simply folded up the camera because she said, can you record what I'm saying? Yeah, that's why I actually recorded it. Otherwise, this would probably not exist because there was no recording in the room. She said they have 2,591 Montessori schools in Tanzania. You know where Tanzania is, just beside Africa and the equator and so on. Would you imagine this? For sure not. If somebody would say, okay, which country has 2,591? Not even Germany. 6,000 Montessori teachers, not even Germany. 100,000 students in a Montessori school, not even Germany. And then she talked about the training. The training is starting with building materials. Okay, that's what I did when I trained myself in Germany. We also started, we had to build all our materials ourselves. Nothing bought from Nienhuis or gum or whatever. And they built a complete set. And they showed videos, actually. It's similar like the one in Kenya.
Yeah, I saw the videos.
This is the way we have to go. We have to
equip
them.
Andy,
what's teachers that they can teach and build up schools. And all the schools in Tanzania are actually private schools. They are not.
Andy,
they are not
what's been the
schools,
secret of that success, Andy, in Tanzania, from what you heard? Can you talk a bit about that? What's been the secret to that promotion of Montessori?
The secret is pretty simple. They have very good relation to it. Okay, they had a very good president, which unfortunately died, I think, 2 years ago. Suddenly, he was gone. And fortunately, they found somebody who can continue his work. And he actually brought into this whole thing the government. And the government said, okay, you cannot call a Montessori school when you have not even a teacher who's trained in Montessori. This will help a lot. Just imagine how many Montessori schools we have, which have the name Montessori, but are no Montessori schools. One trained teacher doesn't mean that you can do Montessorians, can still do something else in the Montessori school, than a Montessori school, but at least there is some regulations there. Beside this, they have support from the Arthur Waza Foundation. This foundation is helping them to renovate kindergartens, to get out walls, to bring more air in. They have built up some policies, how a Montessori surrounding could look like, no doors and so on. And they are helping them financially also. They're helping them to get the ground. Yeah, all the legal parts. And this is actually something which in my opinion, AMI is the job, what they should do. Yeah, what we have, like UNESCO is the education part, policymaker, and actually have to talk to the governments and see that the governments are changing. Okay, I know UNESCO is talking, nothing changing. Yeah, that's what it is, UNICEF and so on. It's exactly the same. But actually, this is actually the job, what they should do. They have to go to the government and present them something. And I think the best way to present it to the government is simply to show them some working examples. Yeah. Now in Thailand, if they would go, for example, I think Schön is somewhere also here. I've seen it before. When you bring the government to Schön's school and they stay there for 1 day, I would say, they will also sit there. How can this be? Why is it so quiet? Why are they all working? Yeah. And this is what we have to do.
Yeah, I think that's part of what Sylvia was saying, that we really need to get the government involved. Did you want to respond, Sylvia, to anything?
Absolutely. No, I agree with Andy. I was there. Yeah, I heard all the amazing work that they were doing, and it is possible here in Australia as well. It's just about getting government attention, and you've got to start somewhere, and he's exactly right. When you're talking about education or, your qualifications that you need to be teaching in a school and all that. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, Andy, and it's very, very, I'm so glad that you shared that with all of us, because it was very valuable. And we did take a lot from the Congress about that. you know, in terms of how people are doing Montessori in different ways and how it works. And it, you know, it's not about having, you know, the Neen House materials and doing all of that. It's about working with the environments and the support and the resources that you have available to you to do that. So yeah, it is about, yeah, support lobby with research. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's definitely one of our priorities at Montessori Australia, is to get the attention of government on Montessori, the successes of Montessori, but also to have Montessori training recognised by AITSL and government generally as equivalent to traditional teacher training, because it should be.
Yeah.
The problem from accepting bringing the Montessori into a university, which is teacher university, they learn actually how to pick up the students where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. While when you have only Montessori, they often have no idea actually, and then they're confronted with classroom management problems, simple problems, and all these things. I talked to many people actually there about the training, and they said, yeah, we are failing in classroom management. Yeah, because they don't learn it in an AMI training.
That's exactly what I was saying, Andy, in terms of the education that we're getting. So it was when I went through my master's into, so a teaching degree, you know, in mainstream is where, like, yes, we learned all of those things about classroom management and all those really important things. Like, these things are missing in Montessori education, and a lot of things as well around communication, about guiding children's behavior, about supporting teachers, you know, in programming and documenting and all of those things that really is valued, or in mainstream, you know, teaching degrees, that needs to be, you know, translated into Montessori. But also the other way around too, we also need to be educating mainstream educators about Montessori, and that there is an alternative way, because a lot of those teachers are getting fed up. I've had teachers come from mainstream early childcare settings saying, like, I'm exhausted. I can't, the ratios, you know, we have ratios here in Australia, and it's just absolutely, you know, one teacher to, you know, 11 kids in a preschool classroom, and then there's all this expectation on documentation, and they can't do it anymore because they're getting so exhausted and tiring. And that is worse when they go into primary school with one teacher to 30 children. It's you know, the skills both ways need to be transitional between the two, because I think if people knew that there is also an alternative way of teaching and doing, people have come across and said, wow, I didn't even know this existed. You know, I didn't even know this Montessori thing. So I think we can kind of take from both sides and try and come up, you know, with this system, or try and help to make changes within both, because it's so crucial to, you know, to the future of Montessori if we want it to survive and to keep growing. So yeah.
Sylvia, on that note, Ilona asked you in the chat, do you suggest any special communication training for your teachers?
Yes, mine. So I do, I host a 7-module training, which we do, over half days, or, you know, 3 days training, which we do. And there are certain modules on self-discipline and, like, you know, engaging cooperation and resilience, building resilience and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I decided that there wasn't anything that met my standards. So, and I knew that all of these modules were so important. So for me, I created my own based on, you know, obviously child psychology and development and all that, to make sure that teachers felt after that they had practical advice that they could actually implement in the school. Because it's no point theory. Everyone talks about theory, which is, you know, Andy's point as well. It's all about theory, but nobody gives teachers or educators the practical solutions or advice on what to say, how to say it, what does that look like, let's practice it, you know, and really kind of get involved so that they feel ready and equipped to face those, you know, whatever it is in the classroom that they need to. So yeah, I my own training is what I would recommend.
It seems to me that some of the resistance that we encounter to Montessori from government and generally perhaps also, you know, wider in the wider community could be that Montessori is seen as obsolete because, you know, something from the past, because we always, whenever we see the word Montessori, it's often associated with this image of an elderly Italian woman who died 70 years ago. Do you think that there are areas where Montessori needs to be updated? Do you think that's true, that there are areas where Montessori needs to be updated to better fit the modern world, apart from the aspect of class management that you were talking about?
Yeah, look, I know that technology and, you know, all that has been come up at a lot of our conferences, you know, how kind of Montessori is, you know, moving along with technology and in the classroom, because now a lot of mainstream classes are using technology quite heavily as the main type of, you know, when we look at that aspect of it, I think there's a time and place where those tools can be useful in some degree, whether it's the teachers using them, documentation and all that sort of stuff, or accessing curriculum online and all those type of things. However, the thing that, I mean, it depends which perspective you're looking at, because if you ask me personally, there's a huge movement happening. And I say that because obviously because of my platform, you know, we have 1,000 members joining weekly that want to know about Montessori. These people have no idea. They've heard about it. They have, you know, they're pregnant or they have children between 0 to 3 years, and it keeps growing. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, parents and people out there globally are looking, and it's this rapid movement that's, you know, trending at the moment. In terms of, you know, people looking into that. So I think from that point of view, from parents and educators, and people are really interested to know a lot more about what Montessori is. So I think that the interest is growing a lot. And I think in Australia, when we're talking about technology and the modern world and all that, I think when we look at preschool curriculum and all that, it should be evolving. Everything should be evolving, whether you're looking at early childhood or primary schools and all that. You know, if Maria Montessori was alive in this world, she would also be adapting and you know, and kind of being a little bit flexible in the way things were done and how things are doing. I'm not saying change it. It's just about opening your perspective so that you are keeping, you know, in with society and what's happening. And of course, the principles of the philosophy will never change. All of the materials, like these materials, is what's helping children in today's society, because they're not learning. What I've noticed is that children are coming back to our school that are in primary school that are struggling learning through technology and all that, because they're not being able to connect with the material. They're not being able to connect with the concepts because they're not able to touch it, manipulate it, you know, do the golden beads and understand more concretely what's happening. They're not able to learn in that abstract way that people are putting, that where the school system's putting pressure on them to do. So I think what I see is a growing interest in coming back to these materials that have been beautifully developed to actually support children that are in mainstream schools. So yeah, I think that's really an interesting point that I've seen come up.
Speaking about technology, how do you think AI will impact Montessori in the coming years? I mean, I've read that there's in the next 3 to 5 years there'll be a rout of a lot of information jobs from AI, and that the areas of society where AI will affect us most are healthcare and education, because previously it's been impossible to provide enough human resources to individualize care in healthcare and education. But with AI, you can really give each child their own AI bot who will kind of follow their development and individualize theirs. So, you know, I have this horrible image in my mind of, you know, every student having their own little AI bot at home, like feeding them worksheets that are individualized to their own.
Mark, regardless of how much AI infiltrates, nothing can compare to like that relationship and connection that humans give to each other. And I think especially in education, and especially in my field of early childhood education, there's nothing that can like come in that can compete with that, because children feed off energy. You know, they need that human connection. They need a sense of security and belonging and all that. And I don't think that any type of AI is going to give them that feedback that human to human interaction is going to do. The only way I see it helping is if it's in documentation, administration, you know, all of those tasks that we get busy with as school leaders, or as, you know, documentation and doing all of those tasks, those mundane tasks that, you know, I think it could help in reducing the stress on educators, and that when they can use those tools to be able to help minimize the time that they're spending on these tasks as an assistance to what they're trying to relay on that information. So I think on the administration or marketing and business side of things, it can help as a tool, but I don't see it as a like something that's going to be infiltrating like into the classrooms. It's just
Great answer. Yeah, I think I agree with you that relationships are really where the rubber meets the road in education. If you don't have a good relationship with students, they're not going to learn much from you.
No.
Or each other.
Absolutely.
Well, Sylvia, thank you for your relationship this evening. It's been wonderful to get to know you and to hear about your really important work. So thanks for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
And please put any resources that any links that you care to that people can follow up with in the chat before we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can follow my work at Guide and Grow, or like on my website. So I'll just type it in there. I know somebody was asking about training and stuff. I do it online. It can be an online course. It can be, you know, modules between Zooms and things. I travel as well. I do a lot of travel and do in-person workshops. SylviaArotin.com. And if anyone wants any free resources for themselves or for educators or for parents, when you go on to SylviaArotin.com, on the main menu, there's Guide and Grow. So you can click on Guide and Grow, and then you can have access to all of the videos, the blogs, the platforms, and that's all about Montessori. We've got events all the time, and they're all free for anyone to attend. So any educators, parents, anyone can join the community.
Well, thank you again for sharing your inspiring story.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it. And to everybody that's listening out there, like, I'm so grateful for all of you joining tonight and listening to my story, and everyone. I will put that in there, Andy. I'll just correct that, guideandgrow.com. That's for you guys as well. You can think about it there. Lovely. But thanks so much. And I'm lovely to see some familiar names and faces from, I'll see you guys at school this week for anyone, for any of the parents that are listening out there. And yeah, I really appreciate sitting here, and I'm really thankful and hopeful for the work that, you know, organizations are doing here in Australia, for the betterment of Montessori, you know, including Montessori Australia and other organizations like MISCA that I'm on the board for as well. So yeah, I'm hopeful for the work that we're doing to really better Montessori in Australia.
Well, thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.